Picture this. It's June 8th of 2023. Summer Game Fest is just around the corner. A few days prior to this, rumors of a potential Persona 3 remake were making the rounds on the internet, and Summer Game Fest seemed like a reasonable place to officially announce this remake. Unfortunately, in my case, Summer Game Fest would be streamed very late at night because time zones are a thing. But no worries, I can just leave my phone to charge in the next room and I can just go to bed and hope for some great news tomorrow morning. I wake up the next morning and the first thing I do is... After almost falling over myself, I look at my list of YouTube notifications for YouTube reaction videos and such, but the only thing I see is... I felt my disappointment just building its way up my throat, but suddenly I see something.
What? What the fuck?
I hurriedly looked up the leaked trailer and watched it. I wish I had footage of me watching this trailer, but here's an accurate representation. I didn't even know I could make these noises. Anyway, Persona 3 Reload was now officially announced during the Xbox showcase, and there's a ton of information regarding the game out there as well as some in-depth analyses of the trailer shown. For this video, however, I wanted to focus on why exactly it is that me and a lot of people had such an intense reaction to this announcement. Why is it that a silly little game about shooting yourself in the head gets us so emotional? And why does the original Persona 3 mean so much to me? To explain that, I would first need to share how I first found out about Persona 3. I'm gonna try to make this as spoiler-free as possible for those who are going to experience it for the first time through Reload. Now, video games are a hobby I've had for my entire life, ever since I was like 4 or 5 years old. But the only RPGs I was interested in way back then were the Digimon World games, mainly because as a child you don't really care much for story in games, and I mainly played them because I really like the monster designs, and monster collecting games are still my preferred genre to this day. I was aware of other JRPGs at the time, mostly from my older brother who played a lot of them. Some notable ones were Star Ocean, Shadow Hearts, Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, basically the golden era of JRPGs back on the PS2. One day, however, when I was like 7 or 8 years old, so this was back in 2009, I stumbled in on my brother playing Persona 3 FES for the first time, and the first thing I see is this. Several questions began to fill my little 8-year-old brain. Why is this guy shooting himself in the head? What the hell are these enemy designs? What was that thing that showed up for like half a second? What are these environments? Why is there some guy rapping in the background? Why is there a semi-metallic looking naked woman in the party? And for f***'s sake, why is there blood on the ground everywhere? I continued watching, and the more I did, the more I could feel that this game is something special. I learned that the game had a monster collecting aspect to it, which I already loved to death. I also learned about the social sim aspect, which was a very unique idea at the time. You have to understand that the concept of an RPG taking place in modern times was a foreign concept to me, since most RPGs I know went for a more fantastical setting, and I just loved it so much more for breaking that mold. As I watched, I also found myself actually engaged with the story. I ended up watching all cutscenes from the October 4th cutscene all the way till the end. The story was great, but what actually carried it for me was the voice acting. Nowadays, Persona 3 isn't particularly remembered for its superior voice acting, but let me just show you the level of voice acting it was competing with.
I mean, you can't use your arm without spirit energy, so...
Stop it! How could you?
I didn't. Adara. I just...
And then Persona 3 comes along and pulls this off.
In battle, there's always a chance of dying. I knew that. But I was so focused on fighting that I didn't notice anything else. It didn't matter how tough I was. Look what happened!
The difference was like night and day. And because the voice acting and writing were so well done, I found myself actually invested in characters for the first time. You know, characters that weren't monsters or animals. Anyway, I continued watching my brother play this seemingly incredible experience, and he finally reaches the final boss fight. And I remember just being absolutely terrified the moment the final boss showed up. I watched my brother try to beat this boss for hours and hours, but unfortunately he failed every time. Every time the boss's health reaches zero, he just regenerates it all back and it just seemed impossible to beat. So my brother, seeing me all enthusiastic about this game, hands me the controller and tells me to help by grinding some experience from the enemies wandering around. And so I did. Day after day, I would just grind and grind and grind. Then I thought to myself, hey, why don't I just try to beat this boss myself? And so I did, and it felt like the biggest accomplishment in my life at the time. I mean, granted, the game was set to easy, but hey, I was 8 at the time, okay? That shit was hard. Anyway, that's the story of how I first played Persona 3. The first thing I did was beat the final boss. Good thing I didn't care about spoilers back then. Later on, I played a new save file, finished it, and since then, it solidified itself as being my favorite game of all time. And because of that, I ended up playing all the JRPGs I missed out on over the years and it became my favorite genre. I would, however, always come back to P3 time and time again. Persona 3 impacted other aspects of my life as well. You can imagine, I played it when I was in 3rd grade onwards, and since then it was one of the few things that brought me comfort. I constantly felt out of place in school, especially because kids my age were more interested in games like FIFA and Call of Duty. So making friends wasn't the easiest thing. But I didn't care. I always had my siblings by my side, and in my own time, I had Persona 3. Another thing I'm indebted to this game for is basically teaching me how to speak English. I'm Arab, so English isn't my first language. A lot of Arab kids struggle with learning English at a young age. But thanks to Persona 3 and my desire to follow its story and understand what the characters are saying, I ended up learning how to speak English much earlier than my peers. It's not a stretch to say that Persona 3 had a hand in raising me. Hell, I even started to run around with my hands in my pockets because I thought it looked cool. No wonder making friends was hard, right? Now, some of you are maybe wondering, what about the game's themes? You know, the thing about death, about living life to the fullest and not wasting it. And yes, of course, this game heavily altered my perception of our eventual demise. But I'ma be honest, that was only later in my teenage years. When I was 8, all I thought was, haha, look, funny demon man with pointy wiener. And that's all it took for me to love this game so much. It's experimental, it's stylish, it's addictive, and most of all, it's impactful. And that's why Persona 3 means so much to me. It shaped my love for this genre, and played a big part in my growth to the man I am today. Persona 3 is to me what Final Fantasy VII is for a lot of people. And that's also why I think it deserves this upcoming remake. And I can't wait to experience it and relive my childhood all over again. Thanks for watching everyone, and please share your own story about how you discovered Persona 3 or whatever your favorite game is in the comments below.